SoCalQOL. It is Spiritual Wellness Sunday, and hopefully, it's the last late night of our lagging podcast uploading. I apologize. As always, I'll always apologize for this because I would rather it be early in the morning for you guys. That way, you actually can hear it on the day it's intended to be heard. But yeah, let's jump right into this podcast for spiritual wellness. And we are going to continue on our quote sessions series with episode 2. And we are still talking about hashtag extreme ownership, the book by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. And if you didn't get a chance to hear the other quotes from last time, I think it was last Sunday. So if you go back one spiritual wellness Sunday podcast, you'll be able to find it there. But we literally only went through the preface, like literally the section before the introduction is all we got to. And there was only like 8 quotes. So today, the introduction has about 4. And then chapter 1 has about 4 as well. So we might be able to get through the intro and the first chapter. Woohoo! Moving on up. But the thing about quotes, for me especially, is depending on the context, depending on the application, and how vague it might be able to be applied to for everybody. One quote could last the whole podcast if it really, had its weight in content and spiritual wellness. So, when we talk about spiritual wellness, it's not about, or it's not only about, the religious side, having faith in something bigger than yourself. It's also, your morals, your ethics, your standards that you keep in your daily life, whether it be at your job, your business, your school, your workplace, your church, wherever it is that you, interact with other human beings. So, yeah, let's go situation where a group of people must work together to execute a task and accomplish a mission. Now, out of context, that doesn't really make sense. But in context, we're talking about teams. We're talking about people coming together to do a task together. And, a lot of times you don't think about the big picture. You don't think about all the elements involved or the other types of people involved. A lot of times, if you're a leader or if you're the boss or you run a department, you don't necessarily just always gravitate towards everyone else but you and what you need to have accomplished. Because some people, yeah, might want to help you, but they might not have the type of skills that you require. So the emphasis of this quote is on work together to execute a task. That's kind of the primary emphasis of this quote. And I personally don't like doing things by myself. I like working with other people, even if it's like me calling some tech person in for a company that I'm trying to use their product or their website or something. There's a sense of like trying to work together to create a solution to a current problem, like especially if a website's down or there's a form missing or there's a link that's not working. Even that to me is better than just necessarily just sitting there and trying to do it by yourself. But naturally, I think even me, like I naturally, if I'm not thinking group wise, if I'm not thinking about working together with other people, I will be very narrow minded and I'll be very like, well, I just need to get it done the way I want to get it done. And it's kind of sounds selfish when you say it out loud, but at the end of the day, if we're thinking about our business, our workplace, organization, department, whatever, and we have a task at hand, and lo and behold, there's the task that could be done by one person, but if you could get 2 or 3 other people involved, what kind of development will that create? What kind of trust will that begin to develop for you and those other people? I'm sure it's going to be a lot. I'm sure it's going to be more positives than even if you do find out that someone that you tried to work with is not a good person to work with, you didn't fail. You just learned that that isn't the right person to go to for that subject or that uh, type of work. Okay. So the next quote, it says, it's on, actually, that other quote was on page 7. This quote is on page 8. And it says, if it serves as a useful guide to leaders who aspire to build, train, and lead high performance winning teams, I'm going to emphasize that one, high performance winning teams, then it has accomplished its purpose. So, what we're saying here is, you know, if you are in the business of creating good teams, but also high performance teams and winning teams, then you can accomplish that by using um, certain types of things to build people up, certain types of things to train people, and to essentially lead them. Um, as far as extreme ownership of the book, it does do that. It is a guide for other leaders to use. And even if you don't consider yourself a leader, you taking this book, reading it, and going through and going, I don't see this a lot in my own personal mentorship, but I do see it in this other person who leads this other group, or I've seen it in this other individual, in my family, or whatever the case may be. And that's something to be aware of, something to make note of. And essentially, if you do have a problem, if you are looking to be mentored or to get some kind of guidance, you can see it from a mile away, because if you read this book, you'll be able to see the tall tale signs of a good leader and of what it sounds like, what it feels like. Um, you know, but the leadership thing, like we said last time, there's certain things like the silent professional, like that kind of phrase, which is very true. Um, a lot of leaders don't get the type of reputation that someone who looks good on paper or makes a lot of money would. It's not anyone's fault. It's just the way it works. The free market is going to position people that look good and sound good and financially can afford things, because it attracts more people versus someone who looks homeless and doesn't have a big house or a fancy car. Anything that they have to say, you might not take as seriously. And once again, that's nothing against people and their lifestyles and who they are and how they live their life. It's more so that's just, you need to look through the dirt. You need to get your head out of the clouds and essentially, see that lump of coal as a diamond in the rough. And that's essentially what this quote to me is saying. Um, the next quote we have is also on page 8. It says, every leader and every team at some point or time will fail and must confront that failure. Woo! That's amazing. I cannot even, I can't even begin to count how many times, like even on one hand, that I've seen leadership or a board of directors or the boss of a company really truthfully hold their reputation accountable to something like that. Like literally, like I can think of, like 1 or 2 entrepreneurs. I can think of 1 or 2 businesses that I've either worked at or heard about, or 1 or 2 churches. But other than that, it's really, it's not normal. It's not normal to admit that you fail at something and look at it as a positive thing and learn from it, communicate that failure as a good thing, and then figure out a solution so that the next time it doesn't happen. A lot of times they'll just blame it on somebody in the department, get them fired or have them quit, and pretend like everything's fine and pretend like nothing is wrong on their end. It was more so the person that they hired. And not to say that you won't have that happen in a work environment where you do hire the wrong person and that person does need to get fired because they messed up. But more so that a person and a leader who can literally take responsibility for any problem that happens below their leadership, their rank, their tier, their status, and title. That to me is the leader that I want to be around. I want to work with. I want to partner with, and build up whatever it is you're building. The next quote is on page 11, and it says, training consisted almost entirely of OJT, which is on the job training, and mentoring. So this this is a funny statement because this is kind of what I've realized by listening to other people and other entrepreneurs talk about our current economy, why school and going to college is not necessary for most people because they're not getting on the job training. They're literally learning math, or they're learning, even if you learn economics, I mean that's nice, but unless you're able to apply it to real life, like on one of our podcasts, we've had a guest come on and talk about how she in high school got at least one quarter, or I should say one semester of economics in high school, and how important that was to her because it taught her how to do her taxes, and have a balance sheet or an income statement, and how much it just helped her put in perspective when it came to making money, and thinking about setting money aside so that she could afford to pay off certain things. And all that to be said, a lot of the training that someone like me needs to learn has nothing to do with the school, has nothing to do with the class. Yeah, if you want to get certified or you want to get a license, yes, you have to take a class, yes, you have to pass a test. But as far as like going to a 4-year college for me to run my own business, that's not necessary. For me to have like, even if I had because I have a business in light of the music industry and writing music and being an artist and playing guitar or making music, but I don't have to go to school in music for business to do it. I have to make sure it's profitable, hire other people to help build it at scale, and then add on certain types of services or products or types of revenue that will continue to build up the business. And if it fails, it fails, but it doesn't fail because I didn't go to school. It doesn't fail because I didn't go to college. So all that to be said is, we as a economy, especially or maybe it should be the free market. Us as a country, I'll say, we need to start teaching trades more. So, for example, even SoCalQOL, like I want to teach people the trade of getting healthy, paying attention to their wellness, and if that person wants to then work for SoCalQOL to then help others do the same thing, then that's what the process should be. It's on the job training. You come, you learn, yes, you make some money, but there's still a probation period where if you don't pan out, you don't pan out. And if you have to go your separate ways, you have to go your separate ways. But the point is that there's not a lot of jobs nowadays that will automatically open their doors up to someone who doesn't have a degree, at least in the previous mentality or mindset of a lot of LinkedIn employers. Is you do have to have a 4-year degree or an MBA or a um, some type of certificate or license to necessarily do a certain job. And I'm not talking about the securities industry. I'm not talking about a industry that has a lot of compliance and the legalese kind of stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about stuff that's there to help people, add value, and you don't have to go crazy and make a lot of money to have that kind of company. So I think it's really important, especially when the economy goes down and our dollar isn't going to do as much and we're not going to be making as much money. We're going to have to work harder for the same amount of money. In that moment, I think we're all going to have to really broaden our horizons when it comes to making income, and truly understand that it's going to take more than just, waiting for some magical job to come up because you have a degree. You're really going to have to reach in a lot of different areas to find a niche that'll fit your current income, your current work life balance, family balance, and free time balance. And the best place to do that would be at a company or a job or an organization that has on the job training or OJT. So love that quote. The last one for the introduction is leaders must own everything in their world. There is no one else to blame. Right there. Bam. It's like cutting to the chase. Like if I could take that quote, put it on a t-shirt, and every time I have a really shitty meeting with some, top leader or head of the department of whatever, and I just be like, you see this shirt right here? You see this quote? You see what it's saying? Like, this is what you need to think at all times. You can't blame little Bobby or Miss Sally, who is an intern or who like literally has only been working at the job for 3 months, that the whole company or the whole department or area of wherever you're working with them in, you know fell to shambles, crumbled to pieces because of that one person. It literally has to come back to you, because if anything, you're holding them accountable to a certain standard. And what that tells me is if you blame other people, then you don't have a standard. And the excuse is not pointing down at someone who's not doing their job. It's you should be pointing at yourself and saying, I should have had more things in place, more ducks in a row, and more systems that were available to help. I'm drinking a lot. I apologize, but I've been cotton mouth or something all day. Or I just haven't been talking as much on our podcast. Okay, we have chapter 1, which is ironically titled Extreme Ownership. And this next quote, by the way, the last quote was on page 14. This next quote, I don't have a page number. That's fun. Well, it's in between 14 and 29, if that helps you. And this quote says, I stood before the group. And then it says in quotes, whose fault was this? Question mark. I asked to the room full of no. That was a question that Jocko actually asked the team. And then what he did was, because I can't even remember. I'm trying to look at my notes. Yeah. So it basically just reiterates the fact that no one else would. It's almost like I feel like people will trust you more when they know that you're going to take the blame for something that they did wrong. I just feel like there's just so much more trust in that. People will work harder. People will even work smarter, because they respect you so much as a leader that they'll go the extra mile to make sure that you don't look bad, or you don't lose money, whatever the situation is. And yeah, I think if we even ask ourselves as leaders, or if you're an employee and someone in leadership asks you that kind of question, like, whose fault is this? Like, who dropped the ball, who did this, who did that? And if the leader is blaming a certain individual below them, it would be intriguing for somebody to go, well, in charge of this whole project, aren't you the one running this show? So in that case, it's kind of like, well, I tried, I tried to do my best, but essentially it isn't your fault, because whoever is running that department, that part of the business or that part of the organization, should be held responsible for the team. And that just helps other leaders be better leaders. So next quote we have, once again, is on 29. And it says, the leader is truly and ultimately responsible for everything. That is extreme ownership. And I wanted to make sure to highlight what the definition of extreme ownership was, because it's a clever phrasing. Extreme ownership. Oh yeah, I have extreme ownership. But then when you really look at it and think about it, when was the last time you really had extreme ownership in something that you didn't blame someone else that you worked with or you were doing something with. And yeah, just a very interesting thing to literally, it's almost like you're by yourself. It's almost like you have a team of yourself. So if you look at everyone like you, and you look at everyone like they're just a different, part of you, or they're just little clones of you, you can't blame, you know, employee number one, because employee number one is a reflection of you. So you're looking in the mirror and it's your, clone one or clone five. It doesn't matter what clone it is, it's still you. It's your fault. It's, you need to be responsible for it. So I know we're probably going to beat a dead horse with this phrasing and this talk, but I think it's important. I think it's important to hear, because it just sometimes it takes us the ability to know that somebody else has gone through what either we have gone through, what we are going through, or what we're going to go through, to then really like put it in perspective. Like even today, before I did this podcast, I was watching a YouTube video of somebody who, so there was two people who are keto, and they were critiquing, doing like a reaction video to someone who doesn't normally do keto but was going to try it for a week. And right off the bat, you can't do keto in a week. There's no physical way, because it takes you about a week to literally get through detox for you to even be able to. It's like going to the gym and expecting to, like, not be sore and to gain a whole bunch of muscle. It's just not going to happen. Unrealistic. So so this individual who doesn't usually do keto says she's going to do keto, and then these other critiquers are basically saying what I just said, or I'm saying what they said, which is you can't do keto in a week, so already it's going to fail. And then the hugest like mistake, hugest, that's not even a word. The biggest mistake was, before she even does it, she says as a disclaimer, I haven't looked up any of the side effects, any of the past, um, past experiences that other people have had with keto, especially I have no reference. So as something happens, as something goes wrong, like, oh, I'm hungry. Oh, that's interesting. It's almost like there's the little hint of complaining, or within the next day she's got a headache. Of course you have a headache. You're detoxing off sugar, because that's all carbs are, is sugar. And then by the third day she's like, can't sleep, and she has to pull over while she's driving because she's so lightheaded. And so by like the fourth or fifth day, so she doesn't go through the whole week. By the fourth or fifth day, she just decides to eat what she thinks isn't keto. So she has like some blueberries, and she has what was the other funny thing? I mean, she's eating cashews, but then like, anyways, she's eating like a big salad, and she puts some other ingredients in, and she's like, yeah, I'm so glad or like black beans or something. And it's like, oh, I'm so glad I'm not doing keto anymore. And it's like, this is so dumb. This is so dumb. So all that to be said, I was trying to tie it in to the quote. Um, uh, yeah, you just need to be responsible for everything. I knew I was going to tie it in somewhere and I lost it, so I apologize. But yeah, past experiences. So by her not looking at past experiences, and her not realizing what she was going through was normal, and seeing it as a part of the process, of course you're going to complain. Of course you're going to give up, because you have no reference. And as self-preservation, you don't want to keep going through that the rest of your life. Like, she actually was doing it. She was actually going through those things and thinking in her head, like, this is how it normally is. And that's just so dumb. It's just so dumb. So I wish other people well. Unfortunately, that person had like 1 million+ subscribers, and that video had like 100,000 likes and almost 2 million views. And at the end, recommend doing keto. Like, it's stupid and it's not worth it. So, oh well. People are going to continue to have the standard American diet, sad, and keep eating things that are going to make them feel like shit and be inflamed and not have good sleep and blah blah blah. But yeah, we got to take responsibility for everything. We need to learn from our experiences, and yeah, we need to move on, move forward, develop. I think we got two more. I think we can do two more. So this quote is from page 31. It says, "When a leader sets such an example, and expects this from junior leaders within the team, the mindset develops into the team's culture at every level." So that, in context of the team leaders that are in the junior team leaders that are in the main team, essentially it's duplicating yourself. It's setting the standards, not only with yourself and expecting everyone just to do what you do, but it's essentially developing the culture within the people below you. So that then that next layer of people of the team, of other leaders, of other junior leaders, it's going to set a tone. It's going to create this standard across the board that is then going to overflow into the rest of the people that those people communicate with, work for, all that good stuff. And a lot of people just don't get that. A lot of people think that, well, I hired so and so, and they should just know what I know and how I do things. And um, it's almost like a disclaimer for leaders to make sure that they ingrain their expectations to their junior leaders, because for one, it's like what I've said about, when you do go into an interview, like, you need to ask tough questions too. You need to actually evaluate the employer, because they might say something that you don't agree with. They might say something that's a standard that they have or they don't have. Maybe the standard that they don't have is something that bothers you. And that, to me, is almost as important as um, you have a team and junior asking your main leader, oh well, what are we going to do in this situation, or what would you do here, or whatever. And when you don't hear the response that you would agree upon, that's a good tall tale sign that, okay, maybe this isn't the team I want to be a part of. Maybe this isn't the business that I thought I was going to stay with for the rest of my life. And maybe this isn't the organization that I want to, donate money to, or, you know, help out, So um, it kind of goes both ways. But as a leader, if you're in that position, in that place, you do need to equip and set expectations and set that standard, even though it's going to feel super redundant. It's going to feel like, you're not really being able to implement it the way you want. At the end of the day, there's no real other way to translate a culture unless you're always setting the example. And if you don't teach the example and you just expect everyone else to assume that they're going to be able to figure it out, you're already lost right there. So you're shooting yourself in the foot if you do that. But yeah, as we hit 30 minutes, we got one more quote, and it says, "We put SEAL units through highly demanding scenarios to get them ready for combat." So I don't know what type of business or organization you work with or for. I don't know necessarily um, what or how that statement could apply to you. But what I can say is, if you can't necessarily put people through the ringer before go time, if you can't set up uh, you know the fake scenario, or the route, not the routine, the if you can't set up a way for them to go through the motions, to go through the feelings, and go through the practice of doing whatever type of task or group activity or business process or system that you expect them to have on go time. How like having a football team and not never going over the plays in real time, just looking at pictures and talking about it. That's just not right. That's not smart. That's not going to set you up to win. And so with that, the fact that the SEAL teams, go through highly stressful and intense practice, sessions and scenarios is no different than what we should be applying in our own businesses. And it might seem counterproductive because it's like, oh, like even if you're going to set up for a garage sale before the garage sale, it might feel dumb because you're like, well, I'm gonna have to set it up when I do it anyway. So why wouldn't I just wait till I have to set it up? Well, what about you? What about you pricing things beforehand? What about you? Making sure that everything works. What if something needs a light bulb that you don't have, then you have to go buy it, or setting up signs, or I mean, there's just tons of things that you need to do in order to do the task at hand. And what if the person that's coming to join you on garage sale day, who's never done it before, has no idea what to expect, didn't know they had to wake up early, like it's just building that connection, that trust, that relationship. And it almost goes beyond just the task at hand. It goes beyond that, because you are building a culture, you are setting the standard, you are being an example, all the things that we talked about today. You're literally going to do all that stuff, be in control of, or I should say, take responsibility for everything, so that if something does go wrong, even in the practice round, you make sure that they know, hey, this isn't your fault. This is just the way it went, and it's on me. You know. So, anyways, guys, yeah, I really like these quote sessions. I think morals, and we can even talk about church stuff, because the spiritual side of it's important too. But at the end of the day, if we're not seeing it in context of other industries, other types of people, and you might not consider yourself a trooper, you don't might not consider yourself like a Navy SEAL, but the funny thing is that sometimes, given the industry, some and if it's someone's finances, if it's insurance, or you know um, the list goes on and on, because even though it might not kill you right then, it might set a path up for somebody to go down the wrong route, to go down the wrong direction, have the wrong mind state, and then where are we at? We've basically screwed everything up. So yeah, I really hope that this enlightened you a little bit. If you haven't bought Extreme Ownership, or you don't have a copy of it, let me know. Maybe I can get it for you. I don't know, but if you really feel led to read this book, but you can't afford it, or you can't get a copy of it, who knows? Maybe it's at your library. Maybe it's on eBay. Yeah, we'll figure it out for you. But yeah, I think this book's super important. And if you don't have time to read a book, there's always books on tape. If you can't afford that, yeah, like the best thing you can do, I guess, is just chime in on these quote sessions, because essentially you're getting cliff notes. It's spun a little different way, and it's obviously my perspective through SoCalQOL. So, but all in all, I think it's just important to look back on books that we've all read, or that we look up to, and just kind of retrace our steps, go through the process, and have that little study group. So anyways, guys, appreciate y'all. If you can, like, subscribe, share on the podcast, please review and rate it. Yeah, let people know you're listening, and let us know what you think. But we love y'all. See you later, and bye bye.